Welcome to With You Podcast.
where we explore relationships and life transitions.
I'm David.
And I'm Tara. And we're here again to
We're here
talk to
again.
you about something interesting.
Well, it is. I mean,
We're talking about money today.
we're talking about money,
specifically money between people.
right? Relational money.
Right.
Well,
Exactly.
and it came from asking our kids like what would be a topic, and they never talked to us about that.
They do. They're helpful.
Occasionally, but I was recently over helping destroy a bathroom. I mean, like really construction.
Yeah. And I got to help put it back together.
Yeah. So we were having fun. And then my son just hands me this copy of the Wall Street Journal and says, here, this is for the podcast. And it was an article by, I forget her name, Annabelle Williams, talking about how do we exchange money? And it made me think, yeah, I think that's
the etiquette of splitting the bill and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, just all of that. And it kind of went into like, what's our view on money? There's so many layers to it. We probably won't get to all of those today, but.
Yeah, well, if we're talking from a couple's perspective, or maybe any relational perspective where you share money, that's one of the biggest topics for conflict, right?
Yeah. You fight over it. Yeah.
Because it's personal,
Struggle.
it's resource.
Well, and even like couples I know where in premarital, they have to make a decision. Are we going to have our money or your money and my money?
Right.
And what does that mean?
Yeah.
Like we never really thought about that.
I didn't even consider that there were options. We just share all our money.
Well, we didn't have money when we first got married.
How much to share?
There was not. It was just kind of like, why do we need two accounts? We can barely keep one open because it was grad school. It was all of that.
Yeah.
So we just kind of naturally put it together. But I can see how it can be problematic. I mean, like when I want to buy you a gift.
It's hard to keep it a secret.
There is no way to keep it a secret. Like, I don't know how to do that because the Amazon account's yours.
You're allowed to have an Amazon account.
I know, but then the money comes out of the same account. And it's just kind of like, how do people buy presents in surprising ways for each other? Like you do, because I have no idea.
You just don't pay attention to it. So
you surprise me all the time.
Yeah.
But like, there's no way. And I feel bad. Like, I don't want to spend the money. I mean, you're worth it. So wait.
This is a whole other topic.
But
it is kind of funny because our money is all in one place, when we go out for a meal together, you find it funny to say, when the wait staff comes to bring the bill, like, oh, let me get this one. And I'll be like, oh, let me get this one. We kind of make a show of taking turns hosting or paying the bill.
Yeah, but who's going to be magnanimous?
All the same.
But well, and we were just out with friends. Hi, friends. And it was like both of us guys grabbed the check and paid with the card, but then we gave the receipts to you both because you were going to keep track of the money.
Right.
And it was the same for both of us, which made me giggle a little bit. But it's the topic we want to talk about is like when you go out, and this isn't just for married couples, but it's for friends.
Right.
When you go out, how do you split the bill?
Well, so we can talk about the olden days.
Yes.
Back in our day.
When we just bartered, like we paid with chickens for our McDonald's
meal.
Not
that far back.
Oh, okay.
But what did it look like for you with friends? Like when you were in high school, let's say, did you ever split a bill, or did you buy your own beach burritos down by the lake?
We did always get our own, but it would be like prom. I mean, I think about things like events where we're
more big ticket items.
It was Andy and I going out with our dates, and how are we going to do this? And we weren't smart enough to talk ahead of time.
There's a key right there.
Yeah, that's going to be our takeaway. But so we would go, and then Andy and I both would look at each other panicked of like, oh, I think we're supposed to pay for all of this.
Oh, at the end of it, you'd be wondering how, when, why.
And then we were kind of both looking at each other going, okay, so we both have to do this. How are we going to do this? And I don't remember I think I got a credit card when I went to college. So it was cash. It was just a wad of cash.
Yeah, you had to know how to count. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, you had to do advanced maths.
Yeah, it was all cash in our days. Like in the 1980s when we were both in high school and going out with friends. And if you would if you would go out for a meal together or go to the movies and somebody had bought the tickets ahead of time or something, like splitting the bill was like counting out coins,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
or like having, and that's how you get out of it too. I only have a 20. And back in those days, a movie ticket was $4.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I don't have ones on me. And then how do you follow up? Like,
right. The
yeah.
delay of it, or I'll get this one and we'll settle later. And then you never settle later.
Right.
Or you're on that date and then she orders like a prime rib and you're like, oh, I don't think I have that much cash on me.
Shouldn't have taken her to that restaurant.
Well, and that goes to, you want to put, kind of that idea of magnanimous. You want to be looking like you're giving and generous, and yet there's limits. And if you don't acknowledge, like, again, Andy, Steve, me, we all weren't very good at limit setting or thinking about it ahead of time.
Yeah,
so
maybe planning ahead.
Yeah,
maybe
that wasn't
that's what we're talking about.
How about for you? Like, how did you navigate that with friends when you were in high school?
Well, I just told you, like, it literally was a cash exchange. I don't recall conversations ahead of time either. I don't think teenagers excel in that.
No.
And many adults. Like, especially with money, it's rather awkward to talk about money because people come from different places about it, or some people, or you might assume somebody has more, access to money and somebody has less. And so having that conversation, people are coming from very different places of fear or ability to pay and all of that. So I think people avoid that sort of like politics, because of the personal nature of it. And so I don't remember ever talking about it, but I do remember times when, or dates when you go out to a meal and you're like, that's maybe a different conversation of
gender roles.
Gender roles and who hosts and who asked who out. Even with friends, does that mean they're hosting? Does that mean, and there's cultural things that come into it, which maybe we'll talk about more in our adult experience of money sharing. But I just remember sort of having different types of friends too. Some who'd say, oh, I got it, don't worry about it, and you would hope to pay them back later, but they wouldn't bug you for it.
Yeah.
And other people that would hound you for $2.12 and who are very specific about the way you split the bill down to the penny, or, if 4 people are out for dinner.
Yeah.
And you split the bill 4 ways, or somebody does the math. I'm always the one that says, I don't math. I was an English major. Here's my wallet. Just take what you want. Yeah. But some people will, do the math, split it down to the penny, and then say, oh no, what do we do? It doesn't split evenly 4 ways. And that would drive me crazy because I don't think, it matters down to the penny. Like, let's just round up. Let's,
Well, it makes me think of 2 things. The first thing is whoever was the collector. So I tended to be the social coordinator a little bit. And so it'd be like, oh, everybody just give me what you need. I wasn't good with maths either. So it's just like, give me what you owe. But they wouldn't put in the tip, or it would be just close enough, but they would if it was
people disagree about what tip should be.
If it was $4.60, I'll just give $4.50. And so the person collecting always got screwed over, which was me, of just kind of like, and
then you're like, oh, there's not even enough for a tip at all, so I'll put in the whole tip.
Right.
And
there's a sense of like, that's okay, I'm not going to make a big deal of it. But over time, it feels like being taken advantage of. And so it's not even about the amount, it's expectations, feeling imbalance in the relationship. All of that kind of led. The thing that made me laugh was like pursuing the money. We watched the TV show IT Crowd. It's a British comedy.
Oh, yeah.
And they're IT guys, and his boss, the owner of the company, asks him for a 20, and he's using it for an example, and then just kind of tosses the money out, and the guy pursues him like every 5 minutes.
I do not recall this.
Oh, it is so funny because he's like, where's my money? And it's a power dynamic because it's his boss. But so it's awkward, but he's constantly pursuing because he doesn't want the relationship to be in balance. out of balance.
Out of balance.
Yeah. And so you have that, or you have people that like, I would just let it go, but I wouldn't. I would let it go, but there would be
But not internally.
No. Yeah. And it's like we're all working in restaurants or hospitality, really cheap jobs. So it mattered.
And then you might avoid going out with that person again if you feel like they're less likely to pay you or split the bill fairly.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was thinking, I wrote down a couple of ways that bills get split, whether it was in our high school days, but even now with friends, thinking about stories about splitting. And so it's the taking turns. Like that's a lot of what happens with my friends of like,
Yeah.
I got it this time. And it's just easier to kind of take turns doing
Yeah.
that. And that's nice. When we were in Europe, I think this is what you were talking about later of the etiquette was
and I'm not saying this is this, I don't think we can blanket all of Europe. There's different cultural pockets where they
Well,
have.
I didn't want to be specific. So yes.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter
country
where.
by country, it
but
varies.
Some cultural groups have traditions or ways of hosting where
Yeah.
if they ask you, they must pay. Is that how it was?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if I asked you, that means I'm paying.
Right. And we didn't know that.
Right. Because for us as Americans, it feels like, well, if I'm your guest, wait, let's see, how am I thinking about this? But you want to be able to make it equitable too. Like it feels like if I'm in a place where you're already hosting me to a lot, if we're going out to a meal, I'd love to contribute. I'd love to host you as a thank you for taking me on a tour of this town or whatever.
We don't want to be a burden.
Right.
And so we want to carry our fair share.
We want to carry our fair share. I think that sounds very American.
It is.
Yeah.
It's just like,
yeah.
And we made these mistakes where I think we were really offensive because we wanted to be helpful.
Well, it can be if you're going against somebody else's cultural, hospitality sort of tradition or rule where they want to host you and it's the right thing to do to look like a hospitable person. And worse, I think you went and even paid the bill sneakily.
Yeah,
before.
I do have I have a go-to move.
With certain times, if you know it's going to be a struggle at the end to figure it out, sometimes you'll just, in quotes, you sneak off to the restroom, find the waiter, pay the bill, come sit down, and everybody's still waiting for the bill to be brought, and they find out, oh, it's been paid. And then we walk out. But then sometimes that's a violation.
Yes. And it has caused some relational consternation. I think the thing is to think about the relationship more than just try to navigate things without communicating. And we'll talk more about that. We talked about doing the math. One of my friends has this interesting way of doing it, and it's basically credit card roulette. Where they go out, it's a group of us guys go out and everybody throws their credit card in the middle and you shake it up and someone blindly pulls
literally
one.
Random.
And that's the person that pays.
Yeah.
And now
I don't like that.
Well, and what happens usually is it's the same person's card that gets pulled every time. And so then it's an unequitable.
Yeah. It sounds like unequitable in every way.
Yeah.
Unless people all have the same amount of money and it's just kind of fun to see.
Yeah. But it usually isn't that way. And
no.
So, but now there's this whole new way of doing things. And I still.
Yeah. It's so much easier than cash. These digital apps is what you're talking about.
Yeah. People like, I don't even know.
Venmo me.
Yeah.
Zelle me.
I don't think I've ever done any of that.
Are you serious?
Yeah, no. When we started reading this Wall Street Journal article, I didn't even know I know what PayPal is, but I wasn't quite sure what Zelle and Venmo was. I've heard you talk about it in your business.
Are you serious? You've never used them?
No, I don't even have them on my phone. So I am the one where I'd rather take the check and pay for it than have to try to figure out.
You can't split the.
No, I don't know how to do it technologically.
Oh, that's so funny.
And
I did not know that.
I'm getting hot thinking about it. It's stressful. It's just like
maybe we need to start helping you learn how to do these things.
But a lot of places now here in Wheaton, they will just divide it automatically. Their point of service is so easy. They can just divide it based on what you've had, or just divide it down the middle. And so that's helpful. Right. But I also wonder what my friends, when we do that, I'm wondering what my friends are tipping because I want to be about the same. And wouldn't that be horrible? Like one is a generous tipper and one is
And it's very
A
obvious
Dutchman.
with
Yes.
the 4 different bills. Yeah.
But yeah, is that wrong that I don't know how to do
Well,
Venmo
it's
and Zelle?
it could be worrisome. You should have the ability at least. I use Venmo with your brother a lot. If we, if we split, if let's say we go in together on a present for your parents or something,
Yeah.
and one of us buys it, the other will send a Venmo request for the rest, of what we owe. Or usually when we travel together
That
as a
stuff all
family
just
group,
happens magically.
I know a lot of stuff happens magically in your life. I usually do all the vacation planning and travel planning, so usually then I'm the one paying ahead for the ground transportation or the hotel or whatever, or Airbnb. And so if we split it, if we're staying
Yeah.
with other family members like we did for our kids' weddings or things like that, you can very easily send a Venmo request or a PayPal request or whatever for
So what is a request? Seriously.
So in the apps,
Okay.
you can also, it's almost like you can hold money in there like a bank. So it's kind of already in there.
Okay.
It's being held there. It can be transferred directly to your bank. So it links with your bank account.
Yeah.
So this app is connected to your bank account. So, if I'm going to pay for the Airbnb and we're staying with other family members and I decide each one has said how much they can, which that in itself is tricky also.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a whole other thing. But if they say I'm going to pay $200 towards that, then I can on the app click, send request for $200 and say what it's for. And you can use emojis and it can be kind of fun.
Okay.
to this person for $200. And then they just hit, yes, I do agree. I'll send that money and it's in your app instantly. And then you can transfer it into your bank account.
What if you don't respond to the request? Does it take it out automatically?
No.
Oh.
Nope. They have to decide to be part of that. You can't just take money from people.
Because I was like,
that would be like reaching in somebody's wallet, and just taking out what you want. It doesn't work like that.
Well, that explains then why the Pew Research Center was saying that so many young people, like 18 to 28, a majority of them are using these things.
Well, because we're not carrying around cash that much anymore.
If you look at my wallet, I got cash.
You usually don't.
I usually
so
don't.
Where did you get that cash from? Just kidding.
Someone Zelled me cash. It just showed right up in my wallet.
Nope.
You said it shows up in your wallet.
Nope. In your bank account.
Oh, okay. Then I don't know where that money came from.
I think you're overplaying your incompetence about this. I think it's quite as bad as you're saying.
Well, it's helpful to understand. Really, we haven't ever had this conversation. And I think you made a lot of assumptions about...
I just take care of things.
Yeah. I mean, I finally figured out how to put my credit card on my phone. And then you said, oh, no.
Okay, I think the reason we're worried about this, maybe we should keep it this way because your impulse control is a little different than mine.
Yeah, or
your decision-making process goes through much faster steps.
Yeah, and if you sometimes I'm looking on my phone and my credit card comes up on there, like, do you want to pay? And I'm like, I'm not even at a pay point. And so I don't know what's happening. And I just shut the phone off.
Yeah, that's just, hitting
the wrong
apps and buttons.
Yeah.
But you can very easily just tap and boom, you've spent money.
It's been fascinating to see because I've always seen the kids pay with their phone and I couldn't quite figure out if it goes to their phone bill.
That was very helpful for me to discover for the first time too, when I was coming home from a birth once at, some terrible hour of the morning when most things weren't open and I was very hungry and very tired and wanted to buy a coffee and some breakfast. And I went through a drive-through and then I realized I had gone to the hospital in the night without bringing my wallet, which is another problem.
Yeah.
Didn't have
my
driver's license, my credit cards, anything. And I'm already at the window having ordered the coffee and everything. And I'm realizing, oh no, now do I just tell them, never mind, and drive away? And I told the girl, I'm so sorry, I forgot my wallet. And she said, well, do you have a credit card on your phone? And I was like, I think I stored my credit card in there, in your wallet.
Yeah.
I pulled it up and she's like, bing, and done. And I was like, woo,
Magic.
yes, it was magic and it was helpful, but it's also so easy that it scares us older people.
Yeah.
How easy it is to spend money.
Yeah. I feel like it'll all be gone.
Right.
And it might go to,
But very handy, as you're saying, in this context for sharing a bill. It's, much easier than counting out cash that people might or might not have in their wallet. It's just, you can split the bill very easily. I think you can tell the app just, split this 4 ways, and then you send it out to each or between these people, and people can pay it instantly.
Oh, that makes sense too, because I just realized I do use PayPal for the Uber, but that's just because you connected it.
That's because it's connected to the Uber app.
But it also asks, do you want to split? And so if
you shared a ride with somebody,
okay.
So if you and a colleague shared a ride to the airport, and you used our Uber, you could split the cost, and they would pay half of it or whatever amount. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's something.
I don't know
new.
if we're just working this out between ourselves, or if this is any new information for anybody else.
I think it probably, my mom, this would be new for my mom, although she Zells you.
She knows how to Zelle.
Oh,
she
man.
Zells very generously.
All right. An octogenarian can do that, and I can't. So, but
so can my mom.
Oh, all right. Well, we will work on. We'll let you know how I do at Zelling.
Yeah, but now you know why. It's just an easier way for people to have the conversation through an app, maybe, rather than having a conversation about whose turn it is or how we're going to split this.
So the idea of like the maths part is pretty straightforward, but it doesn't deal with all the relational dynamics. I mean, it makes the splitting pretty easy.
Well, even that could come into play if, somebody did pick up the bill last time. So they say, we're splitting this, but so-and-so doesn't need to because I covered them last time, or they covered me, whatever. So there's always nuance, I think.
Well, and I do want to know about the social etiquette of, like, if you made a request for pay from me, how long can I wait before I pay you back?
I think with an app, it should be, it's just like, we just had this meal together, or we just split this ride together.
Yeah.
I've already outputted the money, so it should be instant.
Yeah.
There's times in which there's a delay for whatever reason, but etiquette-wise, I think within 24 hours is fair.
Yeah.
to expect.
Well, and I think, people in our age, as long as we have jobs and that should be pretty easy. I think about the younger, like teenagers and 20-somethings, they may not have the funds because of the financial pressures of rent and all of that. So then there might be a delay. How do you navigate that?
I would just
don't spend money you don't have.
Exactly. I mean, it's just like, think of it as cash. If we went out for a meal when we were in high school, you would look at what you ordered based on what you had in your wallet. I'm not going to order the prime rib if I have $15 in my wallet.
Yeah.
I'm going to order just a side of fries and be happy with that. That's the other problem.
That's right.
When people have, that's a whole other question.
Uh-oh.
When people order very different meals, and some order alcohol and some don't, and then we split the bill evenly, that can also feel unfair. So maybe that's a conversation, but with the delay, then it to me it feels like, well, maybe you shouldn't have been doing that activity or going to that meal and expecting somebody else to pick up the tab if you can't pay your share.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Then it's expectations and relationships.
And that's the social etiquette. So the technology is making it easier, but yet still some of the underlying things of, should I be going out? What can I afford? Do we have that honest conversation of, do we tell our friends, really don't want to go to that restaurant, or really don't want to buy a bottle of wine?
Mm-hmm.
Or can we split it based on what we order?
Yeah.
Those are all important conversations, but they also make me uncomfortable.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the problem.
Right? Because implicit in there is like social location issues of, what resources do we have? Don't we have? What does it mean to be vulnerable that way?
Yeah.
All of those things are at play, and especially if it's a young relationship, or if it's young kids navigating this is a hard thing.
Yeah. Or if it's people who aren't young, who are older and were able to afford things at one time in their lives and are at a different place, where it's not as affordable. Yeah, and power can come into it. It can be a power play,
Yeah.
covering the bill or not covering the bill. So there's a lot of stuff layered in between conversations about money, which I think is why it's avoided sort of like politics.
Yeah, and it can cause relational problems. So I think about us, like I like the idea of generosity. Early in our marriage, we weren't in a place to be super generous, and I would pick up the tab, and then you would be like, "What are you doing?"
We just went to a zero balance in our checking account.
and so it would be like, okay, so how do we navigate appearance and desire for generosity and living within our means and the pressure that can put on relationships as well? Because you were very generous even in the response, but you're like, we can't be doing that every time, even though we would like to.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard to say that you can't be part of an outing with friends when it's just because you can't really afford the same things some friends can afford. It's hard.
Yeah.
Different circles have different abilities,
Yeah.
But that's a typical American problem too. I think a lot of people just live in debt.
Yeah.
Where it just goes on the credit card and you pay for it with money you don't have. And then it just kind of follows you around.
Yeah. And I think an American problem is they don't go out, like just isolate. So rather than having a conversation of let's go out, but let's do something on the cheap.
Yeah. Well, I kind of like how we've kind of built a new tradition, and this is partly, it's not really about money. It's kind of maybe about just not needing to be out where all the hustle and bustle is. But with some of our close friends, we've just taken to eating meals in homes.
Yeah.
Just cooking for each other, hosting each other. It's much less pressure, and there's, much more place and time for conversation and less worry about all this stuff.
Yeah. Well, and it is so much, and given inflation and all that's going on, the cost of living, it makes a lot more sense. And it's relational. It's fun to do. I know we just a few weeks ago went out and we're looking at a nice bottle of wine, and then I saw what it cost, and then days later I was at I was at a grocery store, and saw it was 4 times less to buy it in the grocery store than at a restaurant. It's like, why are we doing that? Why aren't we just having friends over, people over, doing that rather than going out? And I think our friends across the world, we do that much more. It's a invitation into the home, or it's going out just for a coffee. There's the valuing of time together, not what we're spending.
Yeah.
And I think that's a U.S. problem as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe.
U.S., not us.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right. So I should pay people back within 24 hours. Got it.
Yeah. But first, let's get you on those apps.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I'm just going to stick with cash. I like cash. It seems to work out well. Anything else we need to talk about money? I'm uncomfortable, so must be a good
Yeah,
conversation.
you had a few things you wanted to talk about. Have we kind of covered all those things?
I think we have.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point of it is the issues about sharing money it's never just about money, right?
No.
It's always a symptom of something else, or it's just a token of the other things going on in the relationship. So we always like to go a little bit deeper with that, of what it's, if we're not paying somebody back, or if we're struggling with splitting a bill evenly, or if we're holding secret resentment because, we've been asked for more than we think is our fair share, or whatever. Maybe there needs to be a conversation. Maybe there needs to be something more out in the open, or maybe it's about so much more than we think it is.
Especially if it's good friends, of having that conversation ahead of time, of because there's the dance of, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go out to eat? Our close friends know we don't want to eat in the Wheaton area.
Well, I think that's become a myth.
Yeah, but it's
We
fun because then we get to explore
we like to explore
restaurants,
lots of other places. We've
all
taken
different
friends to
places.
places they never would have dreamed of going.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, and we just had a fun one that we went and explored. It was a Balkan restaurant.
yeah,
That's the one thing I love about the Chicagoland area. We
yeah,
can go to lots of different restaurants, but there can be lots of different price points. And so the question is it the activity or is it the time with people? What are we prioritizing and how do we communicate that of here's the parameters? And maybe you're uncomfortable talking about money, so it's just like this is really what we want to prioritize and here's kind of where we want to go
yeah.
of
Well, I
being
think
direct.
that's part of the problem is it can just start to feel transactional, especially I think that's one of the things that article said about splitting the bill among friends and how the apps make it easier. And so you can split the bill very cleanly,
Yeah.
and the asking is much more, you know, it's digital, not
Yeah, interpersonal.
conversational.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, but the downside is it can feel really transactional, because, they were saying there's something to the art and sort of balance of with a friendship when sometimes somebody would cover the bill for you and you'd say, let me get that next time. There's hope in that if we will have a next time.
Yeah.
The next time I want to come prepared to host you. And there's a reciprocal back and forth and you're never down to the penny,
Yeah.
which you aren't emotionally either.
No, it's not a
There's
balance. Like even
there's
last
yeah.
night, you were telling me I'm not keeping score. We were talking about a conflict we were having. You're like, I'm not keeping score. I think down to the pennies keeping score in a
Right. And so
relationship.
that's what I wonder, and that's what maybe was explored a tiny bit in this article is that there's some reflection in the way we manage that balance financially with maybe where we are just relationally. And if we're keeping score down to the penny, are then we doing that with our emotional interaction too?
Yeah.
Like it's my turn to be listened to this time and I did this for you last time, so you need to do this for me. That doesn't feel nice in a relationship.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something to the art of the balance that maybe we lose when we're so precise
Yeah.
with the down to the penny. And if it falls into the relational part and the emotional exchange, then it can feel just transactional.
Yeah.
And it'll never be fair. Like that's what I have to
Or
realize. Like in a relationship,
equal.
it'll never be equal.
Yeah.
It'll never be equal, completely equal. Who's giving, who's taking, and that balance. There's always a back and forth, and a season and different times in the life of a relationship. And same with financially. When we were in grad school and we really had nothing to spare, we had to really scrape to pay our bills. It just felt like you don't want to be the needy one. You don't want to be the one struggling or saying, I need to count it down to the penny. It feels like you need to rely on the grace of others.
Yeah.
But I feel like those things usually come back around. There's a time when you can be generous and you can be gracious to the person who's scraping and say, I want to get this one.
Yeah.
And there's something in that that's artful and not measurable.
Well, I remember vividly a friend's dad that rebuilt a car engine for us and didn't want anything for it other than a commitment that we would pass that kind of generosity. I get emotional. That kind of generosity along, and it was really not transactional. It was I'm able to do this. I know how to rebuild cars. I want to do this
Yeah.
for you, and here's how you make the relationship balanced is
Yeah.
you commit to being generous
Yeah.
passing it down the road.
And that's generosity plus, right? Like
Yeah.
we have been really fortunate to be the recipients of some grand generosity
Yeah.
from
Overwhelming.
family and from
Friends.
some friends. And it feels, I think in our economy, as humans, it feels like we have to even things out. So it can feel, I don't know, it feels hard to be, especially on that end of it, being the recipient, feeling like you can't ever pay that back
Yeah.
fully.
Yeah.
But such a generous thing to learn from the people like like people who've been that way to us, who can say, not only am I going to give this to you, but I don't want you to pay this back. I want you to pay it in generosity to somebody else.
Yeah. And I think that fits into our faith deeply, right? Like we were just hearing in the sermon yesterday. It's not anything that we can do to make our relationship right with God. It's all generosity of what he's done. And then from that fullness of what we've received, we're able to give to others. It would be great if we could do that all the time and with like how we split the bill, but it's hard. We fall short a lot. I think of professors of mine, Jack and Judy Balswick, talk about that give and receive. It's like to give love, to give forgiveness, to give service, to give being known. And then it's also, you have to do the other side so people can give. You have to be able to be known, be forgiven, be loved, be served. And I think we fall on one side or the other. And this is one of those places where it might not be we fall on both sides in this moment, but do we have a longer perspective on that?
Yeah.
And give and receive.
Yeah. And are we open to being receivers without feeling like takers or less than? Yeah.
It's hard. Like receiving is hard. And I think it's a cultural thing in the US of we're supposed to be independent.
I think it's kind of a human thing. Like, honestly, I think there's different degrees of it in different cultures for different reasons. But I think as humans, we like things to be balanced. And there's an economy of, cause and effect and give and take that feels better when it's in balance. So I think for me, realizing that there's seasons and cyclical times in our lives, and really there are times, which was hard, like even when we were in not as much financially also, but in a time when we needed more help with small children and, it can feel like, this feels like it's going to be forever, or I just need other people's help.
Yeah.
And it feels like I don't want to be the one that is seen as needy or taking, but I feel like time always comes back around when there's a way to be the giver for somebody else and to know what it felt like to be able to receive something freely and then to give it back.
Yeah. So that's a good takeaway in this conversation. I mean, it got deep really quick.
Well, that's where we go.
Yeah. I think in kind of a little more shallow takeaway is talk about beforehand. Right. I mean, that's the deep relational cut there.
Yeah.
But the other thing is talk about it.
Yeah.
In most things, having a open, honest conversation ahead of time, and not while you're sitting at the table and the waiter keeps coming back going, can I take the check?
But when you decide to go, hey guys, this one feels more on our
where we are
this restaurant
right
feels like more where we are right now, or hey, could we split the bills like for what we ate this time, not down the middle or whatever, just making it a conversation so it's not sort of a resentment that gets held on and lives in the relationship.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot.
And don't worry about the pennies. I just think for anybody who's splitting the bill,
that's what you're stuck on.
I really get annoyed with splitting a bill that way. I feel like, it's fair enough to round it up $1, just if we're splitting hairs down like that, it feels petty.
Yeah.
It feels like, you might have that tight of a handle on your checkbook, but it's also like a couple dollars here or there.
Yeah.
It's all going to work itself out.
The psychology of it is you're working from an emotional deficit and feeling taken advantage of in other places. And so that's why you focus on the very smallest detail.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
And I can appreciate that, but also in in actuality with a group of friends, it feels better to be just a little softer on the edges.
Yeah. Well, hey, can I take you out for dinner?
Your treat or mine?
Well, you know what? It'll be mine this time.
Let's get you that Zelle app.
Because it comes out of the same account.